One of the big differences between us culturally is that I actually remember a time when the country was really, really unified, even though it was brief. I remember that moment. And I remember that it's possible, right? But if you're like 22 right now, there has been not a single moment in your life where the country has actually been unified that you can think of consciously. It just hasn't happened.
So this is the heartlandinstitute.org, heartland.org for everybody watching. This story is linked on the front page on the right side. And on this page, you can link directly to the crosstabs. Oh, no, they download them. So you can download the crosstabs. Yeah. Now there's 3 sets. And so these are publicly available for anybody, but there's 3 sets. So we'll put these up one at a time. So you're probably more familiar with these than me, but I did go through them. So Trump, we have Trump approval. It was weighted to the 24 recall vote and income caps.
Yeah. The income cap one was really interesting. So we asked people if they would support a law imposing a maximum annual income cap. This is part of a series of questions where we're trying to find out just how socialistic the people are, especially the people who said they want a socialist, president. What are they thinking that means? And the income cap question, it was 59% of young people said yes, they want an income cap of at least one kind. And some of it was 100 million was 17%. So that's a pretty high income cap. But, 8% of them said less than $200,000. And if you add in the other 8% that said 500,000, we're talking about 15% of people, roughly 16% of people. So, that's a pretty sizable chunk of all young people. We're not talking about Democrats. We're talking about all young people. $1 million or less, that was a quarter of them. So again, it's just one of these policies that this is by far not the craziest question in the poll. But when you see, it's really interesting. When you see 60%, almost 59% say, yeah, I do want to limit the income that people can make. That's not a good sign if you're on the right.
Not. Well, here's the wild thing. It's like, okay, go out to the right. And it's like only 33% of self-identified Republicans explicitly say they don't want income caps.
Yep.
That is so socialistic. And they're Republicans and conservatives, 32% of conservatives and the Trump voters. Only 24% of Trump's strong approvers do not support income caps. This is wild. 32% of Trump voters. So did nobody explain to these people what free market capitalism is? Like the whole point?
I think it
takes people's wealth away.
I think it fits with the theory that I said earlier that really what they're doing is they're anti-elite. That's really who they are. They're anti-elites, anti-establishment, anti-institutions. And so who are the people with money? They're the elites, most of them, right? And so it all kind of fits. It's like, yeah, I like Trump, but I don't like the elites. And so I want the elites to, I want to put income caps on them. It's not driven by this sort of ideological commitment to conservative ideas. It's more just an anti-elites, anti-institution thing. And we're going to see that theme throughout all of these questions. Same thing.
Yeah, they want the system burned down, but they happen to thankfully be complacent right now.
Yep, that's right.
This one wasn't as bad. Only 40% of 18 to 39-year-olds wanted people who didn't use preferred pronouns punished. But only...
You think that's not bad?
It could be worse. Let's be real. Only 45% of Republicans said no.
Yeah, but that's insane. Only 45% of Republicans said no. I'm sure the Trump voters is probably about the same. That's crazy. That's crazy. That one is really bad because that's not even a socialism thing. That's just a pure freedom of speech type thing. This is a violation of the First Amendment, obviously. Nobody seems to care about that, but
Last week in my Reddit video, I read a really good article that was on Real Clear Politics talking about Zoomers. Author's name was Atlas. And yeah, the word that I think he used that I hadn't considered, but is obviously at play here is frailty. The fact that these people are, quite frankly, snowflakes. I've worked with a few of them, many of them, right? And I don't know why that is or what happens. Like, how do you have an uprising of snowflakes?
But it has happened.
Constitutional amendment. This one was, let's skip ahead. Do you like this one? I don't know.
No, let's keep going.
This is the one. Handing over the keys to the United Nations.
Yeah, this one was wild. Would you support a proposal for a new constitutional amendment that would give the United Nations the authority to oversee the Supreme Court and presidency, oversee it, to ensure that Americans' rights are being protected? And the somewhat and strongly support combined is 59% for that one, and 27% strongly support, which is really incredible. I don't know how anyone can strongly support that. And the Republicans, I mean, it was horrible. It was 56%, right? For Republicans, the self-identified conservatives, it was 60%. If you combine the somewhat and strongly. So,
yeah,
I mean, again,
60% of conservatives.
What's crazy about this one is it makes sense with my previous theory. Well, we don't trust the institutions, but it doesn't make sense because so you trust the United Nations institutions? Like, they're the worst of them all. Very weird.
These people like had Captain Planet, right? You know what I mean? And like that kind of, they've been worshiping multiculturalism in schools, and they probably don't like that there's wars, that people like Putin can invade Ukraine and that Israel can attack Gaza. I think it's an appeal to authority. It's a cry for help here. It's just another anti-system signal. I think there's like no signal across religion or anything. Muslims overwhelmingly, but it could have been a small sample.
Yeah, probably.
Not an education signal. Is it education? No, it's literally everybody. It's wild.
It's literally everybody. It's just young. I mean, obviously, it's younger people only. We ask the questions to, but I think that one is the most terrifying one of them all, of all the questions we asked, because of it gets right to the heart of where we're at. Right, you don't trust the existing structure so much that you would put an international globalist body in charge of it that is not that we can't control. I mean, we can't control that, and they don't care that we can't control that. The idea is like, I'll take any strong man I can find off who's going to maybe make things better here. They're willing to roll the dice on the UN, which I think, again, I mean, it tells you a lot about the lack of faith in the existing institutions. Is extremely dangerous, extremely, extremely dangerous. Because what happens when these people become the primary voting bloc in the country?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, everybody thinks the Zoomers are going to fix it, but really the reality is we have a window in which the millennials have their shot, and then we're all screwed. Is what it comes down to, I think.
I think that's true. Yeah, and we actually didn't mention that, but it's worth probably mentioning that when you look, because we've alluded to the conclusion earlier, but when you look at the breakdown of the age demographics for some of these, for all of the questions, basically, the age demographics, we've got it like 18 to 24, 25 to 29, 30 to 34. So you can really tease out how Gen Z thinks versus the older group in the cohort that were millennials. And you can see that on virtually every question, the 18 to 24-year-olds and the 25 to 29-year-olds are more radical than the older group in the cohort, which means Gen Z, according to the findings of this survey, are actually more authoritarian and more socialistic and more willing to have a socialist president and more willing to put the UN in charge of everybody than millennials are, which completely blows up that narrative that we've been hearing over and over and over again about Gen Z becoming more conservative overall.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're only going to grow out of some of that for sure. Yeah. Because all these influences we know that exist. I found the lowest number here of people by demographic who support the UN taking over the United States.
Yeah.
People without a partner who are not dating. So basically incels.
The young conservative incels at home watching endless loops of
Posting
Jordan
frog
Peterson
memes,
videos and posting. Yeah, we can count on them. They're not going for the for the globalism.
Oh man, let me see if I can find the next one.
That's hilarious. Jeez.
I think we've talked about it before. I don't know how much we've discussed the fourth turning in relation to these polls, and it's a big topic. We don't have to get into it. But history tells us that the millennials are the generation that fixes this. The Zoomers are the artist archetype, which is similar. Basically, they grow up during the crisis, but the crisis has been solved by the generation ahead of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. It doesn't feel like millennials will be that generation to fix it, but
well, no, time out. Do you remember in 2001 when the country was at each other's throats and every headline was about the end of 2000, really, when every headline was about how exactly divided America was because our election came down to 300 hanging chads.
Right.
Less than 12 months later, George W. Bush had an over 80% approval rating.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff happens really fast. And what happens is, like, a major crisis or leadership will align everybody behind a new set of leaders that are from that generation. It's not necessarily that like every millennial throws down their job and then it takes up a sword or whatever. People have been pointing at JD Vance and saying, well, he has a very different leadership style and he captures people's attention in a way different than Donald Trump. That's the kind of thing I think that might fill the back. Maybe it's somebody else. I'm just saying, his debate. Everybody's like, his debate is so great. He talks so different than Trump.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, what's really interesting now that you say that is the 9/11 thing. One of the things that's so fascinating about this, because I run this fellowship program, and it's all younger people, and called Freedom Rising Fellowship Program, and it's younger people and training them to become leaders in think tanks and in media and stuff like that. And we had this meeting after the Charlie Kirk assassination, and we were talking about the country and the reaction to it and everything. And I realized as I was having this conversation with them, I brought up 9/11, and I realized none of them experienced 9/11. They don't remember it at all, obviously. A lot of them were just too young to remember it. And so I realized, though, that one of the big differences between us culturally is that I actually remember a time when the country was really, really unified, even though it was brief. I remember that moment, and I remember that it's possible, right? But if you're like 22 right now, there has been not a single moment in your life where the country has actually been unified that you can think of consciously. It just hasn't happened. And what does that do psychologically to you when you don't even think, maybe it's not even possible, right? Because I've never seen it. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen, right? Yeah. But I know it's possible because I lived it, and I remember people I remember the 80% approval. I remember people all being like, we have to come together. And it really has never happened since. When Barack Obama was elected, there was a little bit of that, obviously. There was a lot of people who really were trying to rally around, the first black president and all of that stuff, but that was very short-lived as well. But really, if you're in your early 20s, you don't even remember Barack Obama being elected. So it's like, there's nothing in your life. What you remember is Donald Trump, basically the end of Obama, maybe Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, constant fighting, assassination attempts, all this stuff. That's what you think of. And I do wonder if maybe that does undermine the point that I had made earlier, and that maybe millennials, that does give them kind of an advantage, I think, in a leadership way, I would think.
I'm just trying to think. I'm like right on the edge. So as I think back, so I was 22. So basically millennials would have been in their teens, would have been paying attention for sure, but not yet. So they were right in the wave where they wouldn't have enlisted. That was wild too. It wasn't just everybody coming together. I just looked, there was like a 3-fold increase in enlistments just in the fiscal year following the 9/11 attacks. So it's not just that people all came together and trusted the president. They were ready to fight a war.
Yeah.
And like, obviously, there's a dark aspect to this because, well, this is the kind of thing where I look around our society now and I say, the fourth turning will definitely fix this. It's just a matter of how bad the crisis gets. Because remember, the societal sin back then was literally just being Cindy Sheehan and questioning the war. Everybody hated that woman. They hated her so much. She was a pariah. And it's like, okay, well, in retrospect, like, you know, like that's a massive change. It's a very, very, very big difference for a country that had done so. At the time, the Vietnam War was only 25 years old, and people were literally lining up around the block to enlist and savaging Vietnam War era peaceniks.
Yep, that's right. And that was and I mean, Congress almost unanimously voted for war in Afghanistan. I mean, in Iraq, even. I mean, it was, I mean, it's almost impossible to imagine that now. I mean, but it really was, and it happened fast. Well, yeah, but not for the same, not in the same way.
Yeah, true. No, I'm sure they'll, you know, they will line up to send Americans into the East Europe meat grinder, I think.